Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Streamline English. I hope you are having a peaceful day. Find a soft, quiet place and let yourself settle. Breathe in slowly and gently out. Tonight's story is about an empire you may never have heard of. An empire that lasted over 1,000 years, that kept the lights of civilization burning through one of the darkest periods in European history, and that shaped the modern world in ways most people do not realize. You don't need to understand every word. Just listen, and let this hidden history unfold. Most people, when they think about the Roman Empire, think of one thing, that it fell. They know that Rome, the great empire that once dominated all of Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa, collapsed in the 5th century of the Common Era. And then, in the popular imagination, came the Dark Ages, a long period when the lights of civilization went out, when learning declined and knowledge was lost, before the eventual rebirth we call the Renaissance. But here is the thing, that story is only half true, because the Roman Empire did not die all at once. One half of it died, the western half, which included the city of Rome itself, which fell to invaders in the year 476 AD. But the eastern half, centered on a magnificent city at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, carried on. It carried on and transformed and survived for more than 1,000 years after the fall of Rome. It became something extraordinary, a civilization that preserved the knowledge, the art, the philosophy, and the law of the ancient world through centuries when it might otherwise have been lost forever. And its fall, when it finally came, set off a chain of events that helped ignite one of the greatest cultural flowerings in history. Most people have never heard its name. It is the Byzantine Empire, and this is its story. If you enjoy learning English through hidden history like this, please subscribe to Streamline English. It helps us keep these stories coming. Thank you, my friend. Let us start with a puzzle. The Byzantines never called themselves Byzantine. That name was given to them much later by historians. They called themselves Romaioi, Romans. They saw themselves, completely and sincerely, as the continuation of the Roman Empire. Their emperor was the Emperor of Rome. Their laws were Roman laws. Their language of government was, for centuries, Latin, before eventually shifting to Greek, the majority language of their territory. So how did this Byzantine Empire come to exist? The answer begins in the 4th century AD, with the Roman Emperor Constantine the Great. Rome, by that time, was an enormous empire that had become very difficult to govern from a single city far to the west. Constantine made a momentous decision. He would build a new capital for the eastern part of the empire, in a location far more strategically useful. He chose a peninsula that jutted into the sea at the point where Europe and Asia nearly touch, the narrow strait between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, where ships had to pass between the two great worlds. He built his new capital there, on the site of an older Greek city, and he named it after himself, Constantinople, the city of Constantine. In Turkish, it is called Istanbul, the name it holds today. Constantinople's location was extraordinary. It sat on a triangle of land surrounded by water on 3 sides, naturally fortified. Fortified means strengthened and protected against attack, and its position at the crossroads of Europe and Asia made it one of the greatest trading cities the world has ever known. Goods from the east, silk, spices, jewels, and from the west, grain, metals, cloth, flowed through Constantinople, making it enormously wealthy. When the Western Roman Empire finally fell in 476 AD, Constantinople carried on, and the empire centered on Constantinople, which historians now call the Byzantine Empire, became one of the defining civilizations of the Middle Ages. Constantinople, at its height, was the largest and most magnificent city in the Western world. At a time when most European cities were small and relatively poor, Constantinople was home to hundreds of thousands of people, with magnificent palaces, churches, aqueducts, cisterns, and markets. Its most famous building was the Hagia Sophia, in Greek, Holy Wisdom. The Hagia Sophia was a cathedral, a great Christian church, built by the Emperor Justinian in the 6th century, completed in just 5 years of furious construction. When it was finished, it had the largest dome in the world, a dome so enormous and so high that contemporaries said it seemed to float, suspended from heaven by a golden chain. The light streamed in through 40 windows ringing the base of the dome, making the interior blaze with golden light. People who entered it for the first time were struck speechless by its beauty. An account survives of ambassadors from the people of what is now Russia, who came to Constantinople to decide which religion their people should adopt. They went to the Hagia Sophia for a worship service, and when they came back, they told their prince, "We knew not whether we were in heaven or on earth. For on earth there is no such splendor or beauty. We cannot describe it to you. Only this we know, that God dwells there among men." Those ambassadors' prince adopted Christianity, and their people became the Christian Orthodox civilization that shaped Russia, Ukraine, and much of Eastern Europe. The Hagia Sophia, in a sense, helped shape the religious history of a vast part of the world. For almost 1,000 years, Constantinople was the cultural, intellectual, and commercial capital of the known world for people in its orbit. The Byzantine Empire was wealthy, sophisticated, and deeply cultured. It had universities and libraries at a time when such things were rare in Europe. It produced great art, the stunning mosaic tradition in which images were built from thousands of tiny colored tiles of glass, gold, and stone to create pictures that glowed with reflected light. It maintained and copied ancient Greek texts, the philosophy, the science, the medicine, the mathematics that had been produced in the ancient world and that the West, in its post-Roman chaos, had largely lost access to. The greatest emperor in Byzantine history was Justinian I, who reigned in the 6th century. He was remarkable in many ways, and his reign was one of the high points of Byzantine civilization. Justinian had a great dream to restore the old Roman Empire in its full extent, to reconquer the western territories that had been lost when Rome fell. He sent his brilliant general, Belisarius, at the head of Byzantine armies to reconquer North Africa, Italy, and parts of Spain. For a time, it seemed the dream might come true. Large parts of the old Western Empire were regained. But Justinian's most lasting achievement was not military. It was legal. He undertook an enormous project to collect, organize, and clarify the vast and often contradictory body of Roman law, the laws that had accumulated over more than 1,000 years of the Roman state. The result was the Corpus Juris Civilis, the body of civil law, a masterwork of legal organization that became the foundation of law for much of Europe for centuries. Many of the legal concepts that underpin modern European and Latin American law today trace back, directly or indirectly, to Justinian's great legal compilation. And of course, Justinian built the Hagia Sophia, the most beautiful building in his world, a gift to God and to his civilization that still stands today, 15 centuries later, in the city of Istanbul, Turkey, still drawing millions of visitors who stand inside and look up at its dome in wonder. One of the most important roles played by the Byzantine Empire, a role that was not obvious to the people living it, but that we can see clearly from history, was as the great repository of ancient knowledge. A repository is a place where things are stored and kept safe. While the western part of the old Roman world was going through its turbulent centuries of political fragmentation and cultural change, a period historians used to simply call the Dark Ages, the Byzantine Empire was maintaining its great libraries and universities. When Byzantine scholars continued to read, copy, study, and debate the works of the ancient Greek and Roman world, the works of Plato and Aristotle, of Hippocrates and Galen, of Thucydides and Homer, all of these were preserved in Byzantine libraries, carefully copied out by monks and scholars over the centuries, when the West had largely lost access to them. And when Byzantine scholars began to move westward, especially in the centuries before and after the empire's fall, they brought these texts with them. The rediscovery of ancient Greek learning in Western Europe, which was one of the great sparks of the Renaissance and the scientific revolution, was made possible in large part because the Byzantines had kept that learning alive and preserved it for 1,000 years. In this sense, the Byzantine Empire was not just a civilization, it was the world's greatest library, holding the inheritance of antiquity in trust for the future. The Byzantine Empire's 1,000-year history was not one of simple, continuous grandeur. It rose and fell, expanded and contracted, faced many crises, and survived them. It lost territories to Arab armies in the 7th century. It survived devastating wars, religious schisms, and internal political conflicts. It fought off attackers for century after century. But, from the 11th century onward, the Byzantine Empire began a long and slow decline. It lost Asia Minor, the large peninsula that is now the country of Turkey, to the Seljuk Turkish armies after a catastrophic defeat at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071. It was devastating, sacked and humiliated during the Fourth Crusade in 1204, when Christian crusaders, who were supposed to be fighting on behalf of Christian civilization, turned on Constantinople itself and looted it, setting up a short-lived replacement empire before the Byzantines eventually recovered their city. But the damage was deep, and the recovery was incomplete. By the 15th century, the Byzantine Empire had shrunk to little more than the city of Constantinople itself and a few surrounding territories, a remnant of the vast empire it had once been. The city was wealthy and beautiful and cultured, but its military power was gone. And in 1453, the final blow came. In the spring of 1453, the armies of the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II surrounded Constantinople. The Ottomans had powerful cannon, one of the first times in history that such weapons were used to besiege a city, and they brought down the great walls that had protected Constantinople for 1,000 years. After a siege of nearly 2 months, Constantinople fell. The last emperor of Byzantium, Constantine XI, reportedly died fighting in the final battle, defending his city to the end. The great empire was gone. Mehmed II, to his credit, was not simply a destroyer. He saw himself as the heir of the Roman and Byzantine tradition, and he treated the city with respect. The Hagia Sophia was converted into a mosque, which it remains today, but many Byzantine traditions, institutions, and people survived under Ottoman rule. And the fall of Constantinople set something in motion. In the years and decades around 1453, Byzantine scholars, seeing the end approaching, fled westward to Italy, to France, to other parts of Europe, bringing their manuscripts and their learning with them. Greek texts that Europe had not seen for centuries suddenly became available again. The ideas of Plato, the science of Aristotle, the mathematics of Archimedes, all of these flowed into Western Europe in a great wave of recovered knowledge. Historians debate how large a role the Byzantine fall played in sparking the Renaissance, the great cultural rebirth of the 15th and 16th centuries that produced Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Shakespeare, and Galileo. But the connection is real. The knowledge the Byzantines had preserved for 1,000 years helped give the Renaissance its fire. The empire fell, and what it had kept safe for a millennium helped light the modern world. The story of the Byzantine Empire teaches us something profound about the value of quiet, unglamorous work. The Byzantines did not always make the most dramatic history. They were not always conquering vast new territories. For much of their existence, they were simply surviving, defending, preserving, maintaining. They kept their libraries, they copied their manuscripts, they maintained their laws and their art and their faith, century after century, even as the world around them changed and threatened to overwhelm them. This seemingly undramatic work, the work of preservation, of maintenance, of care for things that already exist, turned out to be one of the most important contributions any civilization has made to history, because what the Byzantines preserved, they gave back to the world, and the world that emerged from the Renaissance, from the scientific revolution, from the Enlightenment, the modern world, was built partly on what they saved. Not all heroic work looks heroic from the outside. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply keep something safe and keep it alive until the world is ready to receive it again. So tonight, before you rest, a quiet thought. The Byzantines kept something precious alive for over 1,000 years, not through dramatic conquest, but through the patient, daily work of copying manuscripts, maintaining libraries, and passing knowledge from one generation to the next. Their great gift to the world was not something they won in battle, but something they preserved through patience. Your English is something similar. Every day that you listen, every word you learn, every sentence you understand, you are building and preserving something in yourself. It may not feel dramatic. It may feel like small, quiet work, but it is exactly this kind of quiet, daily commitment that eventually produces something lasting and remarkable. Your knowledge will not be lost. It will grow day by day, and one day it will be ready to give back to the people around you, to the conversations you will have, to the world you will be able to reach. Keep preserving, keep building, my friend. The Renaissance of your own English is coming. If this hidden history delighted you, please give it a like and subscribe to Streamline English. It truly helps us grow. And tell me in the comments, which forgotten civilization or era should I tell you about next? Until next time, my friend, keep the lights of learning burning and have a wonderful day.